So I have one more to demo today, and this is something I demoed a while back. So I don't know if you guys were on the red zone when I did this, but this was a time zone demo to track if you schedule an appointment, if you're in Central Time and you're scheduling appointments across the country and you want to be able to schedule them in your local time or the participant's local time, how you can assign the time zone, get the time zones for those two things, and set the appointment date. And recently, and this is a project I did for Rush University in Chicago and helped them out. And they emailed me recently and said that the code wasn't working for daylight savings time. And as you can see here, like I have a test to say whether or not daylight saving time is working. And this is just saying if it's in effect or not. And this is just a hard toggle, so I can turn this on or off. And I also have code that takes, that sets whether daylight saving time is in effect based on a date range of the time, when daylight saving time turns on and when it turns off. And that wasn't firing. And it was weird because it was working before and now it's not. And let me go into the designer to show you the code. So here's it's a calc text and it's basically setting the value to yes or no. If I check the DST test field and check it to yes, it automatically turns to yes here. If it's not checked, it turns to no. But I have these date ranges within REDCap. And so there's really no way to do like if this date is between this date and this date. There's not a function in REDCap that does that automatically. So you basically have to just say if today's date is greater than, this is the day when DST starts. If it's greater than this date, or actually I believe this is the day before. If it's greater than this date, then and less than this date, which is when it goes away, then I want you to turn this on. And it was working fine. This today is a variable, a system variable that automatically just grabs today's date, so you don't have to hard code it. But this wasn't working anymore. And so if we go back to the page here, so I have code that fires based on where like these values. So let me put us in. So this tells you that the time zones are set. And this project was in Chicago, so this is hard-coded as Central. This shows us in Mountain Time that automatically grabs it based on these values here. Tells me whether or not daylight saving time is observed here, which it isn't in Arizona, and then whether it's in effect. Now, this is where it should be set to yes. And that's a problem because it's saying that the difference between Chicago time and Arizona time is only 1 hour when it should be 2 hours. And that gets changed when this is in effect or not. So if and let me just save this and so I don't have to keep entering those values. So the way that I fixed it was by using a DateDiff calculation, which Terry was able to point me in the direction of, which I didn't think it would work because it's the same format. Basically, you're saying is the date between here and here, but you're using a DateDiff function instead of the actual instead of just saying is it greater than or less than. So for example, I'm just saying is the date difference between this date and today, is it greater than 0? And if the date difference between this date and this date, is it less than 0? And I don't know if you were familiar with the DateDiff function, but you basically just have to put in two dates, the dates you want to compare, and then what value you want to compare. Do you want it to be like, I want the number of days, I want the number of months, I want the number of years. So we want days, but this last part is optional. And that's to return the DateDiff value as a signed value or not. So if it's true, it's going to return as a signed value. So you can get, because you can have days that are in the future, or you can have days that are in the past compared to the dates the difference you're comparing. And so if it's in the, and it also depends on which order you're putting these fields. So if I'm putting this, if I'm comparing a date in the past to today, then the date difference is negative. And if I'm comparing a date in the future to today, then the date difference is positive, because there's, the 10th of April is 4 days from now. So it's, 4 days. But if it was the 6th or the 1st of April, then that's 6 days, negative 6 days, because it's in the past. So you have to use this. You have to set this to true if you want a signed value to be returned. If you don't care, if you just want to know the number of days that have passed and you don't care whether it's in the past or the future, you can just leave that off, or you can set it to false. So by putting these DateDiff values in for this, it basically creates a date range. And it works just fine. So let me save this. And we'll refresh here. Theoretically, it should work fine. It worked fine the other day. Oh, it's because there's 2 calc text in here. We'll get rid of that. The perils of copy and paste. There we go. So now you can see that it's working correctly. DST is in effect, and it's giving me the proper time. Now, if we were part of Navajo Nation, which is in Navajo County, or Navajo Nation actually spreads across 3 counties in Arizona. And so if the person lives on the Navajo reservation, they actually do observe daylight saving time. So their daylight saving time is in effect and it's observed. So the time difference would only be an hour. So I'm not going to save that. I'm just going to reload it. So we have the old values. Now, the person from Rush that I had built this for had actually had another idea on how to fix this. It might have been easier, and it's a little more elegant. You do have to have a field that automatically has today's date. So if we go to the designer, I just created a field that's called today date, and she had prefill equals at today. So she used the prefill action tag, but that's not really needed because she was pre-filling in the date for the field, and she had prefill equals at today, but the at today action tag does the same thing, so you don't really need that. So I just have a field that is called today, and I'm going to use that for my comparisons. So if I go back to my DST in effect field and I change it back to the original format that I had, but instead of, and just to show you, this was the original format that I had. So instead of it just being today, which is, it's supposed to grab that value. It's essentially doing the same thing. It's, instead of using an action tag, the system automatically uses that variable to grab today's date. Instead of having it this way, I'm piping in I'm grabbing the value of the field for today date. Now, I didn't think it would work because I thought it was, fundamentally this structure was not valid in REDCap. So I didn't think just replacing the system variable with a field variable would do anything, but it actually does. So this is another way to do it. If you don't want to have to go through the complexities of building your DateDiff functions, remembering that, which order you put the dates in. You're comparing the previous date, the past date to the today's date, or today's date to the past date, and then which sign you have to use, and trial and error, and making sure you get the building your date ranges correctly. This is a lot more simple. You just have to have another field that captures the value for today's date. So once we update this, let me go back. Now you can see that it's automatically grabbing today's date, and it's automatically setting DST to yes. So if I change this to like, it's going to automatically update to no. So that's outside of the range that I've set. So we'll set this back to today. So this way, what you can do is you just, in your design, you would just set this to hidden. And then you would set this one to hidden as well, because you don't want anyone messing with it, and nobody needs to see it. And I'm going to put my other check back in. So now when it automatically loads, it should be in effect for this date, and you don't see anything. It won't have this if these values are blank, because I have a thing that you have to have all these values set before it gives you the information. That way you're not trying to schedule a person if you haven't set their time zone and their appointment time. And then this up here is just if it's yes or no, and this will automatic. This basically is useless now because we have it on the date. And this was really just for testing, so I could, instead of having to go back and forth and add things, I could just test it here. So now that can just go away, which I'll do that now. So this, Carrie, did you have a question? I saw that you raised your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I can wait till you're done presenting.
No, yeah, I'm pretty much done. I was just going to say that if you're more interested in the actual building of this specific project, we have that on another red zone video, and that's on our website. And I don't know if Terry mentioned it last week, but we also have a YouTube page now.
Oh.
I put all the red zone videos up on YouTube, so that way it's easier for people to search, and they can add videos to their own playlists and things like that. So all of the videos from our previous red zones are on here. There's like 184 videos. I've also made some playlists that I'm curating. So if you just want to know about external modules or features or training, that's all up.
Yeah, I didn't tell him I wanted to leave it for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it'll be funny because when this video goes onto YouTube, there'll be a video on YouTube about it being on YouTube. Maybe I'll cut this part out. So what's your question, Carrie?
Yeah, so thank you very much for explaining all that. That's really cool. I'm thinking about something that you all helped me with, I don't know, probably like a year ago, on our project. And so we have a lot of people in Eastern time zone. And so when our staff are making appointments, we have one field where they put in the appointment time in whatever the participant's time zone is. And then we have a calculated field that spits out the Arizona time. So right now, the way it works is twice a year, I just go in and manually say whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours for Eastern time zone. Would it be worth it for me to go put this in, or am I more at risk of breaking something in my calculations?
It would depend, because that's exactly what this is built for.
Yeah.
So if we go back to, let me just go to another record. So then, and this is what it was designed for, is to automatically grab somebody's information
Yeah.
and then schedule them. So if we go
Okay.
to the scheduling page, the same information that was on the demographic page is on here. And then this is where you can set the appointment date and time, because there was two things that I programmed in, because right now we're in daylight saving, or right now, you know, Eastern time is in, anybody who's not in Arizona or Hawaii is in daylight saving time. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be in daylight saving time when their appointment comes up.
Right. Yeah.
And so this tracks both of those things. That's why it's
Okay.
whether it's observed and whether it's in effect.
Okay.
And so if we did an appointment date of today and then an appointment time of now, so the project's in Central. And then here you can set the appointment time as either local or participant time.
Okay.
So if you're in Mountain and you're local, so you would just have to change this to Mountain time in your project. And then there's other, there's some other codes that you would have to change. And I think I have them saved somewhere on the website.
Okay.
Because it automatically does those calculations for you.
Okay.
But then you would just decide whether you want it to be, whether this time that you're setting is the local time, so this would be Chicago time, or if it's in the participant time, which is Mountain time. And you can see down here that it would change depending on which one you click, because so just to make it easier, like noon, noon our time is 2 p.m. Chicago time, but noon Chicago time is 10 p.m. our time. So this you would be able to automatically set. So I don't know. I would have to see your project to see what exactly you have built in.
Yeah.
And how hard it would be to change. But this would keep you from having to go in manually every time daylight saving time turns on or off and fixing it. And plus it'll also allow you to have, you could have, you know, if they're not in Eastern time, they could be in any time zone in the United States and it would track them automatically.
Yeah.
Because the other part of this project is getting their time zone from wherever they are. So, and this is where you would, so in this project, this is where you would set your local time or your time zone, and it's just hard coded as Central. And you would just put one of these values in. So for Arizona, it would just be Mountain, and it has to be in all caps for the codes to work. But basically all of these fields in this project are all, because there's some time zones that are set by the county. Like there's some that are just the entire state is one time zone. Some the states have multiple time zones depending on what counties they're in, and some depending on what part of the county you're in. So there's counties that have multiple time zones, and then there's actually cities within certain places that have separate time zones. Like there's 2 towns in Nevada that have their own time zone, like they follow a different time zone than everybody else in the state. It's bizarre. But that's all hard coded in here to, so these are all for the counties, but the time zone here, this calc text is what grabs all the data for the counties. And you can see here, there's a lot of it. And the other thing too is, like I talked about, is that if you're on Navajo Nation, you do observe daylight saving time. But if you're on the Hopi reservation, which is within the Navajo Nation, the Hopi reservation doesn't observe it. So you have to go by which county you're in Arizona, because Navajo Nation spreads across 3 counties. And then you have to just explicitly ask, do you live on the Navajo Nation? So this way you would be able to have anybody you'd register anybody and then you don't have to worry about where they are. And so I'm still uploading, even though we're putting videos on YouTube now, we're also still putting them on our video tutorials page. Because we're also having, I think it's time zone. Yeah. So here is the video for the previous time zone one. And then this is a project XML for this project if you want to download it. And I'll have an updated version that I have to put on here based on the changes that I did to the formula. And then these are the time difference formulas that I was telling you about. So right now this would be central. So these values are what's set. But if you're in Arizona, you would just grab this block for mountain time and you would put it into your field.
Okay.
Let me see which field it is. It's the time zone, time difference project. So this is because see, these are all these values here are for central.
Mhm.
And so if you were in mountain time, you would want all these values. So, and I can, if you want to reach out to me and send me an email, I can work with you offline on this.
Okay.
But you can find the project XML on the on our website, and you may want to wait a day or two so I can update it with the change I made to so the daylight saving time function is working correctly. But that's where you would find it.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. And I'm thinking about the specific week that we usually have a problem is like the week before the daylight saving time begins or ends, because today is, whatever today might be, maybe it's like November 1st or whatever, is 2 hours difference. But
Right.
the next week when the appointment is actually taking place, it's going to be 1 hour or whatever. So would that be where you would replace that, like that field of like today date with like appointment date or whatever?
No, because
okay.
I've already.
Because it'd be there.
Yeah, I've already put that in here. So
Okay.
for example, if we did today, it's a 2 hour time difference.
Yeah.
But let's say I did December 1st, which is outside of daylight saving time. It should automatically change to, well, let me see if I have to change this, because it should automatically update to that if it's off.
Okay.
But I'll double check that because it should change that
Okay. Yeah.
for the appointment.
That makes sense. Okay, very cool. It gives me lots of ideas of things to do when I may have time someday in the future.
Yep. Sounds good. Does anybody else have any other questions or any comments?